Now, there are some films that are considered essential viewing for a cinema lover, yet, for whatever reason, you are slow to get around to watching them. Maybe you actively avoid them due to some aversion or something. Or maybe there are forces outside of our understanding that dictate the timing of our exposure to particular things. Um, I prefer to believe the latter. I recently watched a film I had never seen before, by Ingmar Bergman, titled Persona. I had, of course, been recommended this film for years, and I had already seen many Bergman films, but I continued to avoid this one, for no reason known to me. It is a very strange film, confusing, some would even say boring, but for many reasons I enjoyed this film. The story concerns two women, a famous actress named Vogler, that is her last name, I cannot remember her first name at the moment, and a slightly younger woman named Alma, a nurse. Alma has been assigned to look after Vogler, who is undergoing a hysterical episode in which she refuses to speak. I know what you are thinking. A hysterical actress. What a shock. There is no explicit reason given as to why she will not speak. It started as she was in the middle of a stage performance of the Greek play Electra. I should say here that I have mixed feelings about references, allusions, overt symbolism in a film. A detail like this activates my mind and gets me thinking, oh, she was portraying Electra when this episode began. Let me think, what qualities did Electra have? What were her circumstances? No, I will not play this game. I watch a film to dream, to feel strong emotions, to have something stirred deep within me. The second a film tries to engage my intellect, I swat it away, like a fly. The less a film makes me think, the more I enjoy it. And I am not saying a filmmaker should not use symbolism or allusions, only that it should be done in a way that does not take one out of the film. Done correctly, it should slide down unnoticed into the viewer's subconscious. Too many bad filmmakers rely on references to great films or other works of art, especially from antiquity, to distract from their own lack of originality. I will not name names, but I knew an independent filmmaker who made a few films. He would proudly explain that this shot was an homage to Bertolucci's Il Conformista. The mise en scène of this scene was inspired by Ozu's Floating Weeds. I named her Beatrice because I wanted the audience to infer he is a Dante figure. All his films are terrible. On top of it all, when he does press interviews for the promotion of his films, he says things like, "This film is like La Ventura meets Jurassic Park." A truly despicable person. But he is some obscure filmmaker you've most likely never heard of. Plenty of respected filmmakers, though, rely on the same association with greatness, or something that carries a certain historical or spiritual gravity. When a film starts, like Terrence Malick's Tree of Life, with a quote from Job, I think, fuck you. Don't tell me to think of Job. Make me feel his plight. Clearly, this is a cue to the audience to cast a cloud of significance over everything that follows. And of course, it works on a certain type of viewer and critic. This is, for me, though, the intentional activation of the intellect, which is counter to a true aesthetic experience. In a way, the call to the intellect is designed specifically for the critics, those avatars of good taste. They alone can explain to you the significance of a film. A critic can write a review of Tree of Life that is far more interesting and moving than the film itself, and an impressionable mind will be fully convinced because he has been taught to believe that art is an intellectual concern. But this is, of course, an inversion of the reality. Art is the domain of the sensitive. True art is not a matter for eye-level thinking, but instead for the deepest emotions. Now, I say this, but as I get older, it becomes increasingly difficult to turn my mind off, so to speak. I find myself, when watching most films, thinking throughout. Often it is due to my thoughts being more interesting than what I am watching. However, even when I am watching a movie that I am really enjoying, I will catch myself thinking rather than paying attention to what I'm watching. Perhaps I have ADHD, but I do not think it is this. The thoughts I'm thinking are related to the movie, anyway. Whatever the reason is, it does make me cherish those times when I am truly lost in a film. This is not really a problem for normal people. Many years ago, I went on a movie date with my girlfriend of the time. She picked some romantic comedy, some Jennifer Aniston film. I knew I would hate it, and I wasn't wrong. Early into it, my eyes began roaming around the theater. It was not packed, maybe 30 or so people scattered about the seats. But my eyes became fixed on a woman sitting in the row in front of us, a few seats down, so that I could see her profile. She was probably in her early 50s, wore thick glasses, and she was there alone. Perhaps I started watching her because she was the only person I could get a clear look at, but once I started, I could not peel my eyes away. I became fascinated by just how lost she was in the film. Her eyes were wide and never left the screen. More than this, though, was the slight smile she had throughout. This expression only changed when she would let out a full, genuine laugh at one of the film's many comedic moments. But once the laugh was over, her face would always settle back into this contented smile. Now, at the time, I was a bit of a snob. I looked down on people who were so easily entertained. In this moment, however, I did not feel this way. I felt myself overtaken by sadness. Part of it was surely my assumptions about the woman, that she was there all alone, so late in life, basking in the spectacle of these phantom lives, full of movement and purpose, and most importantly of youth, beauty, and love. But also I believe it was the awareness that I no longer possessed this capacity to lose myself so easily, something that came so naturally in childhood. Uh, at some point, it became too much. I had to excuse myself to the men's room, sit in a stall, and sob into my hands. It's because of this experience that I am no longer a snob about my tastes. I am fully aware that I am the defective one. Uh, of course, I do not wish to be easily drawn in by a bad romantic comedy, but it is even hard for me to get lost in a masculine equivalent like Gladiator, for example. But as a child, movies like Predator, Aliens, Top Gun, these films took me completely outside of myself, and I truly miss that. So if you insist on being a snob because you are no longer easily entertained, fine. But please do not be a dork who thinks this is because art is meant to be intellectual. Do not fool yourselves into thinking that understanding obscure references and other intellectual triggers assigns you some superior status. If you are truly moved by a work of art, surely this is not the reason why. Just be honest with yourself. Mind you, I am not accusing Bergman of this. He was undeniably a great filmmaker. Even if you do not prefer his films, or if you disagree with his view of the world, as I often do, still you should not be able to deny this. For one thing, he always managed to get amazing performances from his actors. And through these performances, he was able to show just how brutal people can be to those close to them without having to use physical violence. A long time ago, I saw his film Summer with Monica, one of his early films, I believe. I do not even know if it's considered one of his great films. But for me, it was devastating. It is a portrayal of young love transformed in short order to bitter hatred. It left a strong impression on me, as have many other of his films, including now Persona. And in case you think I'm making too much of the Electra reference, and I'll admit that might be more of a me problem. I'm sure many would let it pass without a second thought. But throughout the film, there are moments designed to take you out of it and make you remember that you are watching a film. Why? The opening, for instance, is a montage of seemingly unrelated images, very avant-garde. Honestly, it did not do anything for me. There was a brief shot of an erect penis. That did give me a bit of a shock. I thought, what else is in store if he is going to show us something like this? And also, I was aware this film was made in the late 50s, so I couldn't help but think about how scandalous this must have been for an audience of that time. But mainly it just felt juvenile, aggressively subversive. During this opening, I thought, I am not going to like this film. But I was wrong, of course. As I said, I liked it for many reasons, among them the beautiful black and white cinematography, and the performances of the actresses are top-notch, and both are attractive. Liv Ullmann plays Vulgaire, and Bibi Anderson plays Alma. My personal preference is for Alma. Vulgaire is perhaps a bit too masculine looking for me, but I would not nitpick. They're both attractive. And there seems to be a lesbian attraction developing between them. Admittedly, this is another reason I kept watching. I very much wanted to see how that was going to play out. There is also a sinister tension building. You know something bad is going to happen. I realize now I have yet to mention the setting. It takes place in a beachside part of Sweden. Alma and Vogler are staying in a beach house there. Both the house and the surrounding landscape are lovely. We should all be so lucky to choose to stop speaking, then be ordered to recover in such a setting, with a beautiful nurse to aid in that recovery. I must say I did not have much sympathy for the Vogler character. Now, I am not the type that believes because a person is wealthy, as a material surplus, that person is obligated to be happy. I know life can be crushing for anyone, but all we really know about her life, apart from being a celebrated actress, is that she has a husband and a young son, a son she actively ignores and very clearly resents. In one scene, she is presented with a letter accompanied by a picture of him. She tears it in half. It is clear she wishes she had aborted him. All I'm saying, if the extent of her suffering is a husband who maybe she doesn't love, there's no suggestion that he beats her, and a child who clearly loves and misses his mother, he's not a pain in the ass like the kid from Problem Child or something, then I can only conclude that she is a selfish bitch. Now, it is true, I've never been very interested in female psychology. Some men are absolutely fascinated by women with divided psyches. They believe such women possess special access to truth, and even the ability to foretell the future, like Cassandra. I have had the misfortune to know a few crazy women in my life. Yes, it is true they have a closer connection to reality than a normal person, but only because they have lost the filter that allows for civility and social graces. Their special power is in saying things that others will not say, out of tact. I once showed a first draft of a short story I'd written to one of these women. Big mistake. She laughed in my face and told me I was fucking retarded. And for God's sake, do not ever make the mistake of sleeping with one of these women. Think of Julie Christie's character in Petulia. See how quickly her behavior cancels out the fact that she's a hot piece of ass. Disentangling yourself from such a woman is a prolonged nightmare that will have you considering whether murder is the only way you'll be free from her. Unlike a normal woman, you cannot intimidate her into submission. She will wait for you to take a shower, then ambush you in the bathroom with a pot of boiling water. So forgive me if I don't take a special interest in this type of woman. Among filmmakers, Bergman is not alone in his fascination with damaged females. Lars von Trier is an obvious example, as is David Lynch. By the way, if you have seen Lynch's Mulholland Drive prior to watching Persona, you might feel compelled to compare the two films. Both are about an actress undergoing an identity crisis. That said, I prefer Mulholland Drive to Persona. I said before, I prefer a film that makes me dream. And I was completely lost in this film. I saw Mulholland Drive for the first time in a theater during the day. When it was over and I was driving home, the world was changed. I saw things that I know would have been there had I not just seen this film, but because of it, I could now see clearly. This, for me, is the highest aim of art, to change your relationship with the phenomenal world. And I could say I had much more sympathy for the actress character in Mulholland Drive, Betty, than I did for Vogler. Betty was newly arrived to Hollywood, naive and innocent. One can easily imagine what horrors she suffered at the hands of those producers. When she becomes Diane, she is a nervous wreck. Vulgaire, by comparison, is well adjusted. You see it in her eyes as she listens to Alma talking endlessly. You can claim both films are from the perspective of someone who is truly insane and manifesting all or part of what we are watching. I hate this explanation, and if a film explicitly uses it, I lose all interest. Fight Club is one example, and interestingly enough, it has a reference to Persona. Brad Pitt's character liked to insert images of erect penises into films while he worked as a projectionist. As it relates to Persona and Mulholland Drive, I will say this. I agree with Freud. That is, before he changed his tune under pressure, that hysteria is always a result of molestation. And who can blame him? These were the daughters of his colleagues he was analyzing. Can hardly expect him to say, yes, Herr so-and-so, I have gotten to the root of your daughter's troubles. Turns out you were molesting her a bit too aggressively. The damage is done. She's going to be a handful until the day she dies. That'll be 500 kronen bitte. You can imagine this practice would not be a going concern for very long. Now, at least Lynch hints at this with the elderly couple that haunts Diane before she shoots herself. Nothing of the kind is suggested about Vogler. What am I saying then? Vogler was not truly hysterical because she was not molested. Her speechlessness was merely another performance. All women crave attention, but with actresses this desire is insatiable. and they are not content with being the object of desire. They must be interesting as well. One can imagine Vogler thinking, "Oh, you enjoy me as Electra, standing before you. I must go silent. I do not have the words to express to you my contempt for such creatures. Today, Vogler would be wearing a pink pussy hat, proclaiming herself a proud, nasty woman. She'd publicly hang her son as an act of liberation. But I'm getting sidetracked. I want to stick with what I experienced while watching the film, not my reflections on it. Because honestly, I was, for the most part, lost in this film once Vogler and Alma arrived at the beach house. Listening to Alma, I say listening, but I do not speak a word of Swedish, so I was relying on subtitles. But listening to Alma reveal intimate details about herself, and watching Vogler's subtle reactions to what she was being told, I was somewhat transfixed. Less than halfway through this film, Alma tells a story from her past. I must tell you, this story, it is the very reason I am even talking to you about this film now. It is a truly shocking story, especially within the context of the Alma character. I never would have expected she would have had such an experience. She tells Vogler of a time she and her fiancé were staying in a beachside cottage. Her fiancé had gone into town, leaving her alone. She went to the beach to sunbathe. There was another woman there. I cannot remember her name. They sunbathed together, nude. Alma discovers that there are two young boys spying on them in the distance. The other woman is unbothered by this and calls the boys to join them. Only one of them dares to move closer. Alma says the boys were terribly young. We don't really know what this means, but we do know they are old enough to get erections, because the other woman disrobes the boy and guides his hard cock inside her. Alma is watching the boy fuck this woman, and she's getting excited. She then asks the boy if he's going to fuck her as well. The other woman then orders the boy to go to her. Alma describes being so worked up that she came as soon as the boy entered her and squeezed her breast. And it seems he did not have to stroke for long before he shot his cum inside her, which she says made her come multiple times. The other woman then called again to the other boy to come join them. Once he was beside her, she opened his pants and sucked his cock. Alma and the other boy become so excited at this spectacle, they started fucking again. Now, keep in mind, there are no illustrative images as Alma tells this story. And on top of that, I'm having to read what she is saying. Despite this, halfway through her story, I became throbbing hard. I did not have the urge to masturbate. It was just that this story produced such vivid images in my mind. I was at that moment that boy on top of Alma, and the emotions it brought up within me I have not felt these emotions since I was a child. And to that point, most importantly, this story recovered in me a memory that I had completely forgotten. This is remarkable. Such a memory should not be possible to forget. I was 10 years old. I was at my neighbor friend's house. We were in his bedroom playing Nintendo. Duck Hunt, I believe. When we became bored, he suggested we go play on his trampoline in the backyard. As soon as we got out there, my eyes were immediately drawn to the center of the yard, where his mother was lying on a beach towel on her back, sunbathing in a red bikini. Never before, nor since, have I felt such overwhelming lust overtake my entire being in an instant. Her body, covered in suntan lotion, was radiant in the summer sun. Her breasts were large but still naturally firm. They formed two heavenly mounds on her chest. Her curvaceous hips led down to perfectly full thighs. She already had an olive complexion. They were ethnically Italian. Imagine the body of Monica Bellucci with slightly larger breasts. As for her face, I don't remember as clearly because it wasn't as important at the time. But I know she was beautiful. My friend and I began jumping on the trampoline. I did my best to pretend I was only interested in playing with him, as we attempted to double bounce each other higher and higher into the air. But I could not think of anything but air. And it was killing me that I could not just give my full attention to air lying there. So I pretended to tweak my ankle and told my friend to let me sit on the edge of the trampoline for a few minutes until the pain went away. He went on jumping and talking as I sat there, massaging my ankle, looking at air. I finally got to take in every wonderful curve of her body. At that time, I did not have an understanding of the mechanics of sex, and I was still too young to get an erection. I had never been exposed to pornography, but as long as I can remember, I felt sexual desire. I don't remember what age, but early on I discovered I could add surfaces and achieve an orgasm with no cum. I would the floor and the arms of the couch. Looking back, this was far superior. It was all of the pleasure and none of the mess. As I was staring at her, I was imagining lying on top of her, umping. But I was hoping she would lie on her stomach, so I could imagine umping her ass. And I swear to you, she sensed this. She was wearing sunglasses, but I knew she was watching me watch her. Right on cue, she rolled onto her stomach. Her ass was as wonderful as the rest of her. Those ass cheeks must have been on fire from the intensity of my stare. It took every ounce of my will to not run over there and jump on top of her. When I finally peeled my eyes away from that ass and looked to her face, I saw she was smiling. Mon Dieu. I simply had to look away. It was too much. I went back to jumping on the trampoline. Eventually, she gathered up our stuff and went inside. And we grew tired of jumping, so I took my leave and went home. But I could not get her out of my mind. The first thing I did when I got to my room was hump the floor and quickly orgasmed. But this did not alleviate my desire. When I closed my eyes, all I could see were her curves, and that smile she so clearly intended for me. A few days passed before I decided to walk over to my friend's house, knowing that he was away at football practice with his father. Have you ever had the feeling that you know what is going to happen before it happens? And not because you have any control over the situation, but because you want it so badly, as if you are willing your fantasy into reality. I'm not explaining it well, but hopefully you know what I'm talking about. It is a magical feeling, the closest thing I've had to experiencing life as a dream. I have had it only a couple of times in my life, and one of them was as I was walking up the driveway of my friend's house on that day. I rang the doorbell, waited what felt like an eternity before his mother answered the door. She was wearing only a bath towel. Hair soaking wet. The words I wanted to speak were stuck in my throat. Luckily, she spoke for me and told me my friend was at football practice, but would be home soon if I wanted to wait inside. Yes, please. She led me into the living room, offered me water, which I declined, then welcomed me to watch TV while I waited, excusing herself to go dry off and get dressed. I stared at the TV for perhaps a full minute before I rose to my feet and slowly, silently, moved to the hallway leading to her bedroom. The first thing I noticed was she had left her bedroom door wide open. My legs were shaking as I moved closer to the door. When I was next to the threshold, I took a moment to gather the courage, then peeked over just enough for my right eye to look into the bedroom. She was standing next to the bed, her back to me. She had taken off the towel and was using it to slowly dry off her arms. Her hair was still wet, the water dripping off it onto her shoulders. I was paralyzed. I, of course, stared at her bare ass, but was also intoxicated by her smooth back and graceful shoulder blades. When she finished with her arms, she placed a foot upon the edge of the bed to begin slowly drying her leg. As she leaned over to reach her calf, I am sure she looked back in my direction. It was clear she was displaying herself to me. But I was still stuck in place, too terrified to move. I wished she would just force me to join her. Because of her new position, I could see part of her vagina. As far as I know, this is the first time I had seen one. I could also see the side of her breast and erect nipple. My whole body felt on fire. I realized at some point that I had pressed my crotch against the molding of the door frame without even deciding to. But now that I was aware of it, I pressed into it harder and began slowly humping. She took another quick look back, and there can be no doubt that she knew I was watching her, as half my body was within view as I straddled the doorframe. It did not take long for the orgasm to come. Now, every time I would orgasm back then, it would be accompanied by an involuntary shiver of pleasure. But this time, it was more a violent spasm, as if I was having a stroke, and it caused my left leg to bang against the wall several times in quick succession. I was mortified. As soon as it passed, I ran out of the house and back to my own. I could not eat that night. I felt some odd, overwhelming mix of shame and embarrassment, as well as intense self-loathing for not just entering that bedroom and embracing her from behind. I would see her many more times, of course, but only when I was with my friend, and we, both her and I, behaved as if nothing had happened. Now, I ask you, how had I forgotten such a thing? I do not know. But I do know I'm grateful to Ingmar Bergman and his film Persona for unlocking in me this memory.